Dynasty offseason's here. Fantasy football never has to stop.
Never.
So welcome to the channel. We are giving you buy low wide
Come on.
receivers in Dynasty football this offseason. We're going to give you 2 players each. Tell you why. Do us a favor. Why don't you like the video? Subscribe if you like Dynasty content because we got a ton of stuff coming out all offseason, including live streams. And comment down below. I want you to tell me who you believe is the best buy low wide receiver in Dynasty football this year. All right, I'll go first. My first buy low, you could probably guess it.
True.
Because I love this player and I've been a big advocate of his for a long time. It is Treylon Burks.
Treylon.
On the year, 33 receptions on 54 targets for 444 yards and a tud. Wide receiver 73 on the day we are recording this. So clearly a buy low. Check this out. 2 weeks after being drafted, he was a wide receiver 14, according to the Dynasty community. 4 months ago, when I made a video about him to tell you guys, hey, this is a clear buy low opportunity, he was a wide receiver 32. Today, in 2023, he is a wide receiver 22, according to the community. So jumping around a bit. Hopefully, you were able to buy him 4 months ago. We're talking about a guy who was once the consensus 101 in Dynasty rookie drafts this time last year, right? To this guy's a bust because he has asthma in the span of like a month to now where we are, which is still, I view Treylon Burks as a really strong buy. And I'll tell you why I still believe in him. First off, let's talk about the draft capital. Okay. Round 1, pick 18 by the Titans last year. I looked at the last 5 years of first round wide receivers. And let's look at the success rate. I want to look at guys who hit, who were busts. 21 total wide receivers were drafted in the past 5 years in the first round. In 2018, we had DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley. I would consider those guys hits. In 2019, we have Hollywood Brown, N'Keal Harry. N'Keal Harry, obviously a bust. In 2020, we have Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk. I think Ruggs, it's hard to put him in the bust category because of what happened, but you have to. So he's a bust. Jalen Reagor's a bust.
Right.
In 2021, an incredible class. In 2022, I think it's an incredible class. The verdict is still out on Jameson Williams and Treylon Burks. But if you look at those wide receivers since 2018, I personally feel like 14 of those wide receivers were massive hits. So you're talking about a 70% hit rate. And now we're trying to figure out, okay, where is Treylon Burks going to fit in here? Is he going to be a bust? Is he going to be someone who hits on that first round draft capital? I believe this time next year, he's going to be in that confirmed hits type of category. Next, let's talk about Treylon Burks, the prospect. 6'2", 225, big body receiver, can make all the catches, the back shoulders, the one hands, the in traffic. We even saw that this year where he caught that touchdown versus the Eagles and took a huge hit, had a concussion, but he still made the catch. Great contested catcher. Yards after the catch, king. Versatility, you can line him up in the slot where he played in college or outside where he's played in the pros so far. His last year at Arkansas, he contributed to 44.8% of the team's offense, which is a ridiculous number. We're looking at truly a potential dominant wide receiver in the NFL. Let's just quickly revisit his 2021 college football season. Yards after the catch, he was 9th. And we're looking at college football wide receivers with a minimum of 55 targets. So out of 224 wide receivers, he was 9th in YAC. He was 2nd in yards after the catch per reception, which I believe is a more accurate representation because not everyone has the same offense or has the same volume. If you look at yards per route run, he was 3rd in the country. If you look at reception touchdowns, he was 14th. Now, why don't we take those numbers and compare them to this year's class, right? 2023 with the Bouttes, with the Addisons, with the Johnstons, with the Jackson Smiths, if you will, right? Where does he rank amongst those wide receivers? Well, in this year's class, there's 244 wide receivers who had a minimum of 55 targets. Of those wide receivers, he would be 4th in YAC. He would be 3rd in yards after the catch per reception. He would be 2nd in yards per route run, and he would be 7th in receiving touchdowns. So again, another one of those wide receivers like Jameson Williams, which we talked about previously, where he stacks up really well against both classes. There's going to be change coming for Treylon Burks and these Tennessee Titans. This team is in turmoil, and it obviously had impact on Treylon Burks' upside this year. Ryan Tannehill missed 5 games, may have lost the starting job, who knows. Malik Willis is clearly not it. He's clearly not the answer because they benched him for Joshua Dobbs, journeyman who never started in his entire career. Like clearly Malik Willis is not the answer.
He clearly
and
played
you
better.
you might look at that and be like, damn, well Malik's not the answer. I'm looking at it like, thank God, like let's find the answer now. You know, it's like we don't even have to wait until we're in that part where we find out if he's not the guy. But the team started 7-3, they lost 7 in a row, and they finished 7-10. The good news, quarterback they could address in the offseason. The offensive coordinator was just let go, so that will change.
Yeah.
They will likely not be able to add an impact wide receiver like Burks this year. I don't see someone with where they are that they're going to add and it kind of changes their dynamic. That could happen, but regardless, he's going to still be a feature of this team. And we saw flashes this year. I believe we saw flashes of brilliance from Treylon Burks. Only played 11 games, so keep that in mind when you look at his stats. He only played 11 games. Had a concussion, had a wrist and toe injury that kept him out a couple games. And despite this hell of a season, we saw improvement. Despite the organization falling apart, quarterback play falling apart, coaches being frustrated and certain people getting fired, GMs getting fired, pressure, through all that, he still improved this year. If you look at weeks 1-9 versus weeks 10-18, you see huge improvement from Treylon Burks. He goes from the wide receiver 115 to the 56. He more than doubles his targets. He more than doubles his receptions. He more than doubles his yardage. And his points per game in fantasy goes from 6 to 9.1.
Right.
And one of my biggest comps for Treylon Burks coming out of college was Deebo Samuel. It was like an A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel was the upside for him. I'm not saying that was a floor, but that was the upside. So let's just compare some analytics this year in the NFL between Deebo and Treylon Burks. All right. How about yards after the catch per reception? Well, Deebo was first in the NFL. Treylon was 12th, which is pretty damn good for a rookie who only played 11 games and was barely out there as far as like snap percentages. Yards per reception. Treylon Burks is actually better in that area this year. Yards per route run, very, very similar number. Average depth of target. Treylon Burks is being targeted down the field much more often than Deebo Samuel, which we like to see. Drop percentage. Deebo Samuel has a higher drop percentage. So it's good that Treylon Burks is not dropping easy catches. Contested catch rate. Treylon Burks has a higher contested catch rate. So different scenario, different offense, but you can see some similarities in their production. Yards after the catch, yards per reception, yards per route run. You see a little bit of shades of Deebo in Treylon Burks' game and how he could replicate that in the future. Obviously, offensive scheme is important to how these numbers are made and how production ends up, coming through an entire season, but you can see some shades of what he could become. Let's talk about week 11 versus Green Bay. If you want to see the hope, the reason to trade for Treylon Burks, go watch week 11 versus the Green Bay Packers. This is the upside. This is the sort of consistency that we're hoping to see next year. The contested catches, the yards after the catch, the dominating, like you're not going to be able to tackle me in the open field type player. That's the hope that we want to see. And the last thing I'll say is there is a lot of opportunities that will come Treylon Burks' way here next year. Robert Woods clearly peaked. Clearly.
Messi Roberto.
Nick Westbrook-Ikini is clearly just a guy. A healthy Kyle Phillips and Chig is probably going to help complement Treylon Burks. I think he needs those players.
Just a guy.
But with the weak depth in this year's class at wide receiver, Treylon's likely to be the wide receiver one heading into 2023 and ready to handle for full workload. Keep in mind, I think this is very, very important. This might be the most important thing, the most important indicator for you to understand why he didn't have big production this year, okay? Keep in mind that he averaged 4.9 targets per game while only playing 57% of the snaps, guys. He played 57% of the snaps. A lot of that had to do with injuries, getting him adjusted to the game, the concussion. This is not a career 57% snap type player. This is a guy who this time next year is likely going to see 80, 90% of the snaps on a weekly basis, which means if you take that targets per game, you're probably looking now at like a 7 to 8 target per game player. So there was a time of adjustment for Treylon Burks, but I think we're going to see a really good year 2 for Treylon. And you look at the offense, like he has to be a feature. He has to be going forward. And I'm so glad that the offensive coordinator was fired because now we can look towards the future with a new offensive coordinator. All right, what am I willing to pay for Treylon Burks? Well, here are some names similar in the community rankings wise that I think you could explore.
Yeah.
TJ Hawkinson, Chris Godwin, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Joe Mixon, Terry McLaurin, George Kittle, J.K. Dobbins, Derrick Henry, Jerry Jeudy, and Damian Pierce. Or you can try sitting a late first, like 108 to 112, because I think that is also a very realistic thing to do considering his relatively disappointing rookie year.
Yeah. Look, Treylon Burks is definitely a guy, you've always advocated for, and it has been a great guy. And I think there's so much more that's going to come just based off of, everything that's happening in the offseason already with the Titans. Sure. Especially the offensive coordinator move, meaning that maybe they're going away from the run game with Derrick Henry and more into a passing offense. Let's see what happens. That's really exciting.
Or maybe the new coordinator is like, hey, we should feature this guy. Remember, every time he touches the ball, something crazy happens? Mm-hmm. We should feature that guy maybe moving forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, regardless of where, last thing I'll say is, regardless of where you stand on Treylon Burks, you can't watch him and say he doesn't have superstar potential. You can't watch the flashes and be like, this guy's not good at football. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. I definitely agree. So let's see what happens. I'm excited to see what happens with Treylon. My first buy-low wide receiver for you is Alec Pierce. Finished wide receiver 63, caught 30 out of 74 targets, 551 yards, 2 touchdowns on the year. According to the community, he is wide receiver 48. Look, the reason why he's a buy-low candidate because the Colts were in shambles. Okay? Let me tell you about the 2022 Colts, okay? We got there. What the hell happened to the Colts? We were catfished 100%, right? There were so many high expectations coming up. I know a lot of fans out there, just like Zach and I, probably watched the Pat McAfee show. Probably saw Pat McAfee out there in training camp, talking it up. Matt Ryan was slinging it up against the Lions defense. They were going to go crazy. The Colts are going to win. Talking about Jim Irsay. They were talking to Jim Irsay, and I was listening to the owners, holy shit.
Jim Irsay said that Matt Ryan was like an astronaut.
Yeah.
And we were like, what do we do with that?
I don't know. I guess they were.
Okay.
I don't know. But Jim Irsay at the time was like, okay, yeah, I'm with you, Jim. I think everyone was with the Colts. They got Stephon Gilmore. Michael Pittman was going into another year. Jonathan Taylor back off an incredible year. Had one of the best offensive lines. They just needed the quarterback. Carson Wentz wasn't it. Matt Ryan was. You know why? Because he went to a Super Bowl. He lost. But he was an MVP candidate. He did all of it. They just needed the quarterback. Didn't happen. So Matt Ryan was shit. They fired Frank Reich. And they bring in Jeff Saturday. A guy that never coached a game in his life. Probably one of the best centers that ever played with the best quarterbacks ever played. Agreed. I ain't no way I want Jeff Saturday coaching first of all, my NFL team. Secondly, wanting my fantasy players to be on a team that was head coached by somebody like Jeff Saturday. I mean, from what we've seen so far, right? So that is a 2022 Colts. It's been terrible. It's been absolute. And mind you, off the top of the rip, they were the first team to ever give up the biggest lead in NFL history. That's just unlucky for Jeff Saturday and his resume, okay? Reasons why I still believe in someone like an Alec Pierce is the draft capital and what's happening with the Colts now.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope. I woke up this morning, the first thing I saw was Jeff Saturday is a serious candidate for 2023 head coach. And I was like,
so laughable.
I was like, holy shit, I hope this is not real. Yeah. I think since he had the interim head coach role, they're going to have to interview him. Doesn't mean he's going to get the job, but I really hope not. Everything's going to change for the Colts in 2023. They have the ability to draft a top quarterback. They had the top 4. They're number 4. Chicago. Let me tell you who's in front. Chicago, Houston, Cardinals, and then Colts. So then it's clear that Houston's going to take a quarterback, and the Colts damn better take a quarterback.
This talks about them moving up to 1 maybe.
CJ or Bryce. I don't care who you want. I think either one is going to be successful. I don't give a shit. I really don't care. I want either of those guys on this team because Michael Pittman is going to skyrocket. Alec Pierce is going to skyrocket. And that's exactly what's going to happen for the Colts, right? And obviously they invested in Alec Pierce, if I'm not mistaken, in the second round. And Michael Pittman obviously got drafted a couple of years before. And the opportunity is there for Alec Pierce, right? He didn't have the most opportunity he had this year. Obviously, the pathway was a little bit different with all the head coaching moves. They were really trying to get Jonathan Taylor the ball. Obviously, this is a run-first team, or I would say it was maybe a run-first team. I'm not sure if that's going to be the same going into 2023. We'll see. He finished wide receiver 3 behind Paris Campbell on the team, who is now a free agent in 2023. So Campbell does, in fact, leave. Alec Pierce is clearly stepping up into a bigger role. Campbell leaving behind 76 targets. Let's just say he gets 60% of that. That's only 45. That's 119 targets in total for Alec Pierce in 2023. And something that we've always liked about his game was that he was the best contested catch wide receiver in his draft class. And he was ninth in 2022, in contested catch rates out of 109, in college. That's what I meant to say. He was ninth in college in 2021 out of 190 wide receivers, obviously a minimum of 55 targets. So there will be a significant role, in my opinion, with Alec Pierce, with a new head coach and a new CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, hopefully coming into play. I really hope they don't go into the quarterback carousel. I mean, we've seen this before. Draft a quarterback and grow with them. The defense is on par. The defense is there. The defense is ready. The offense has the weapons. Alec Pierce is a guy that can excel. And once again, he is cheap. Right now, according to the community, you can get him for a late second or an early third. I think you could probably squeeze in a third in right now. Send a third, see what happens.
I think that's possible.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't really excited what's happening with the Colts. And I don't think a lot of people realize that the Colts have a top 4 pick either. So if you can kind of get in there now and make that happen, I think it's phenomenal. Players I would trade away to get Alec Pierce. And once again, take this as you wish. It's all based on the community and the rankings. These are played either right before or below Alec Pierce, Rondale Moore, Jacoby Myers, Chase Claypool, Michael Gallup, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Algier. These are some players that I would personally rather have, or I would rather have Alec Pierce over those players. But I think there's opportunity. I think the Colts will be a threat next year if they get one of those 2 top quarterbacks. And I think it's a real chance right now, 100%.
Yeah. I would say the only player I would say I wouldn't want to trade away for him is Rondale Moore. But outside of that, I completely agree. And I think it's a great take. And do you think maybe we can add Michael Pittman to the list? Like, he's also
100%.
He's a buy low as well.
100%. People are panicking, especially after this year, especially how high he went. I think he started off strong, and then obviously the quarterback carousel was just terrible in 2022 for the Colts. I think it ends now.
Yeah, and I brought him as a buy low in mid-season. I don't know if you remember that. And I think the reason I don't know that I missed, but the reason it didn't hit as hard, I think is because of Paris Campbell's emergence.
You think so?
I'm curious what happens.
I was going to say I wouldn't say Paris Campbell really emerged. I just think it was really bad quarterback play.
He emerged from the sense of like he was healthy the entire year and he was like a number 1 on their team.
Right.
At times.
That's fair. That's fair.
But what I'm saying is I'm hoping Paris is gone. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I like Alec Pierce. I like the take. All right. My second buy low, which is probably a player you haven't thought about, if I'm honest. You guys out there, I mean, I'm looking through my list. I'm trying to like find good values for you guys. I was like, oh my God, yes, this is perfect. Maybe you've thought about him and you're a 200 IQ person. How about John Mechie, wide receiver, Alabama, now at Houston. Let's talk about how he became a buy low. When he was drafted in late April, if we're looking at about 2 weeks after that, in May, he was a wide receiver 53 in Dynasty. Now, he was diagnosed with leukemia in late July. A week or 2 later, he fell to wide receiver 76. So pretty significant drop. I just don't think people knew what to do. Now today, as we're recording this, he's currently the wide receiver 60 in the community's rankings. And he's beat the cancer, I believe. He's back to his old self, ready to go for training camp in 2023. And I think that he can definitely improve his value this year. Let's talk about it. The draft capital, to be honest, I don't know about you, Badake, but I did not have a second round grade on John Mechie last year.
Yeah,
I
didn't have it either.
I had like a 3rd, 4th round grade on him, but he was drafted in the 2nd round, the 12th pick. He was drafted ahead of George Pickens, Alec Pierce, Sky Moore, David Bell, some guys that we liked. So the Texans obviously, like, clearly they believe he's going to be an important part of their offense, or can be. Right. So the draft capital is there. Now let's talk about John Mechie, the prospect. Fun fact: he was born in Taiwan, lived in Canada, moved all around as a young teen. So he's gone through quite a few life experiences. As a player, he can operate outside or in the slot. He played 33% in the slot in his last year at Alabama and 66% out wide. But I imagine he'll be a slot receiver in the NFL at 5'11", 187. He might play outside, but I would bet on him being their slot guy. Caught 96 balls and over 1,100 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. Was just a consistent producer in college for Bryce Young and the Alabama Crimson Tide. If you look at pro comps, Badake and I's pro comps for him were Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow. And I think if you think of like a 2021 version of Hunter Renfrow here, that's what we could potentially see from Mechie this year. Think about it. He's definitely not a player who's a true one on a team. He's not a wide receiver one. But if the targets are there, you could see some intriguing numbers from John Mechie, right? There was no Devontae Adams, and Darren Waller was injured when Hunter Renfrow went off in 2021. Well, now we're looking at it, and Brandon Cooks once out. That's 87 targets gone. They're going to clean house here, right? Brandon Cooks once out. Chris Moore is a free agent. That's 68 targets. Nico Collins, who I think is just a guy, had 66 targets this year. And then Rex Burkhead was their 4th targeted player.
Come on, Rex.
Who is 33 years old, and he's a free agent at 49 targets.
Classic Rex.
So you look at next year, and you're thinking to yourself, like, only one of their top 4 targeted players is returning in Nico Collins. There's going to be so much opportunity for John Mechie. Clearly, Brevin Jordan probably at this point, like maybe we'll give him another year, but doesn't seem like he's going to be fantasy relevant or a big producer.
Yeah.
So I think there's a chance they go after a wide receiver with their 2nd first-round pick, but they have a lot of needs. Like they could just not do that with that 2nd pick. That's I think around 15 or so. I can't remember where it is. So there's a chance.
The 12th pick, excuse me. Sorry.
Is it 12th?
They have the
12th overall
the
pick in the first round.
Yeah,
the second.
The 2nd and the 12th overall pick.
Okay.
Via
so
Cleveland.
They could go wide receiver there. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that's like a JSN, a Quentin Johnston, a Jordan Addison. But there's a lot of needs on this team, so it's difficult to say.
Yeah.
So you could see Mechie stepping into a really large target share. He's going to be a very necessary part of this team because Brandon Cooks doesn't want to play there. That was very obvious.
Yeah.
Chris Moore is a free agent. And how many free agents is this team going to be able to attract anyway, guys? This is not just not going to happen. It's going to be a lot of journeymen potentially. And then the last thing I'll say is, could we be seeing, and this excites me so much, could we be seeing a potential reunion in H-Town?
It could.
Right?
You could.
Even though the Texans lost the number 1 pick because of they won that game for some reason. Shout out to Lovey. Parting gift. Bryce Young to the Texans feels like a realistic possibility. A very realistic possibility.
100%.
I would go on to say if Bryce Young's on the board at 2, maybe they trade up. I don't know. Maybe they go to 1 to guarantee it. But if he's on the board at 2, it's a lock. Bryce Young will be a Houston Texan, I believe, based off of what we've heard. So could Mechie be linking back up with Bryce Young, the same college quarterback who led to this production, the 96 receptions, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns in college football? 96 receptions in college football is ridiculous, guys. That's ridiculous. Like that's just a different level of production. So there is clearly a lot of reasons to have hope that John Mechie could be a good value this time next year. And if you're looking at what I'm willing to trade away for Mechie, according to the community, these are some realistic names to target that you could trade away for Mechie. Alexander Madison, Michael Gallup, Allen Lazard, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, Kareem Hunt, Michael Carter, DJ Shark, Chuba Hubbard, Brandon Cooks, his teammate. If you got Cooks, I mean, if you're rebuilding, go move him for John Mechie.
Sure.
Deonta Foreman, Clyde. And if you're looking at pick compensation right now, it looks like it's going to take an early 3rd to get John Mechie on your team, which I think is well worth the risk
100%.
reward there with the kind of production he's put up in college. So I like Mechie. He's a buy low for me, and I think he fits really any timeline. If you're win now, if you're rebuilding. So, yeah.
I think it's interesting. Let's see what happens with John Mechie. And hopefully they don't bring in, I guess the one thing I would say is like maybe they don't bring in, Jackson Smith, because I think he kind of just goes, would he go irrelevant there, you think?
I don't think he would go irrelevant, but it would be tough. Because Jason would be the worst.
Yeah, because he's the slot receiver where Yeah,
But I think as well, like we anticipated JSN on the outside this year. We just didn't get to see it.
yeah,
So it's not to say that Jackson won't be an outside receiver in the NFL. We just didn't get to see it.
yeah. Let's see what happens. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with John Mechie. All right, my last buy low player, which I think it's in the middle between buy low and maybe not, but I just wanted to bring somebody that I feel really strongly and confident that his production will and his value will rise in 2023, and that's Jahan Dotson. Finished wide receiver 52, caught 30. I love it. Caught 32 out of 57 targets, 451 yards, 7 touchdowns. He did miss 5 games this year due to a hamstring injury. According to the community, he's wide receiver 26. I think he can be a top 15 wide receiver going like at the end of 2023, right? And then that's the production that we saw and the opportunity and the way he was playing as a true complementary wide receiver on the opposite side of Terry. And I'm really excited about that. Okay, so let me just refresh your mind. Draft capital, drafted in the first round, pick 16. He was clearly a focal point for the Washington Commanders. Hopefully soon to be something else, by the way. What's happening with that?
I hope so. Well, it seems like the sale is going to happen. We just have to hope that a rebrand happens with something that the people want.
Believing for the rebrand, because we don't want the Washington Commanders. We want go back to the Washington football team. I say this all the time.
I want Red Wolves. I want Red Wolves, Wolves, Hogs, Hogs.
Any of those would be cool. Look, when I was looking back I was like, hey, what type of receivers did they really invest in the Washington team? And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I look back in at least the last 6 to 5 years, the last wide receiver that was drafted in the first round was Josh Doxson in 2016.
That name stinks.
And it seems like they went to this role to where like, all right, we were hit in the third round. Like, let's continue. Like, let's see. Like, let's not try and spend too much value. And I'm glad now that Jahan Dotson is the guy that it was like, we're changing it up. We're going straight for the wide receiver in the first round. I think that's really exciting about that.
I think they saw as well like how important wide receivers have become in the NFL as well.
So I think it's really great to see what was happening. Second, his opportunity. It was clear that, Washington wanted Dotson to start off strong, and he did that. The first 4 weeks, he was averaging 5.5 targets, 13.5 fantasy points. He had 4 touchdowns in 4 weeks. And that's where he got injured, right? He got injured in week 5, if I'm not mistaken, or week 4, and then he was out for 5 games, and he didn't come back to the second half of the season. Not only did he start strong, he'd also finish strong weeks 13 to 18 receptions, 31 targets, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns. He finished with the most touchdowns amongst wide receivers on that team, especially over Terry, which is really exciting. And another thing I want to say is that I guess it's kind of like Terry. I guess, kind of to the point where I always said, I don't like Terry. It's always a quarterback change. I think you just got to be comfortable with the quarterback change with this team. You got to be comfortable with your wide receivers having and I know it's unfortunate, but he's went through 3 quarterbacks, Wentz, Heineke, and Howell now, and he's produced literally with all 3 of them. A rookie, a vet, and a guy technically that I guess you can say that was in the middle. I guess Howell was a rookie, Wentz is a vet, and then Heineke's kind of in the middle, that experience.
Say vet backup,
vet backup, right? So I think that's really impressive as well. And 3, I think a quarterback change is coming. I think we can all agree Washington has been in limbo for years. RG3, he was like since RG3, right? Wentz not the answer, Heineke's not the answer. Are they going to move forward with Sam Howell? I really hope not. I don't think he is the answer, but I think
what? After his performance, they could move forward.
And I think that's what's so frustrating as well, because like, we got Sam Howell.
There were signs. There was flashes.
100%. But is there enough? Like, I would say you would agree with me, especially with the quarterback free agency, which is my next point, that Washington should and probably will invest in a quarterback. That's my thought process and my take here. These are the quarterbacks.
I hope so.
These are the quarterbacks in free agency: Tom Brady, Jimmy G, Lamar Jackson, Trey Lance. Not Trey Lance is not in free agency, but with everything that's happening in 49ers,
could be moved.
Could Trey be moved? Jordan Love. Could Jordan be moved if Aaron wants to stay? Derek Carr. There's so much talk with Derek Carr.
That name feels like it's potentially like very realistic.
Derek Carr.
I don't want Derek Carr, but it's like very realistic. But for fantasy, it would be good for.
But
John.
Fantasy will be good, and I think the quarterback conversation in Washington is going to be interesting. And I think they have a good foundation with defense. I think their offensive weapons is there. The offensive line is somewhat decent. Their run game is strong, in my opinion, with Brian Robinson. They just need that quarterback, and I think that is exactly what they're going to be focusing on this year. Right now they finished as they had the 16th pick in the draft. I think they're outside of the reach unless they want to trade up, but they're going to have to give up a lot of draft compensation, which I doubt that's going to happen. So I think the quarterback free agency is something that's really important to them, or that's going to be important, which is also going to help excel, once again, Jahan Dotson into that next level, right? So according to community, once again, wide receiver 26, I can definitely see him going into the wide receiver 15, wide receiver 12 area, in my personal opinion. And maybe this is too early. Maybe this is my bold take. Jahan Dotson potentially finishing as a top 12, top 15 wide receiver in 2023. I think if you get him now, where according to the community, he is a late first round from 8 to 12. If you can get him, let's say someone is like, oh, I don't really want Jahan. Maybe I can get, a Jordan Addison maybe towards the end of the first, hypothetically, depending on where he lands. Yeah. Right? So let's say that's a 9, the 9th, the 109, the 110. I think I'll be really happy giving up my 110, understanding where Jahan Dotson is now in his career and how he has contributed for this team. Then, kind of mixing it up with someone hypothetically like a Jordan Addison, who, if you go watch our tier video, you should go look that up and then see how we were kind of talking about him. May not be a true wide receiver 1, but a wide receiver 2 on a team. So that's kind of my thought process. That's why I think he's a buy low candidate now, because I do believe he could excel into that mid to early first round in 2023, or at the end of 2023. So players I would be trading away to acquire Jahan Dotson, someone like a Terry, like his teammate, Terry Younger, Chris Godwin, a Nick Chubb, a Najee Harris, a DJ Moore, Michael Pittman. Derrick Henry, I think it might be a little bit hard, but maybe you can have a conversation, and it all depends on your league. Sure. But I really like Jahan Dotson and his ability to take his talents to the next level going into 2023.
Yeah, I like it. I definitely like it. There could be a scenario. I love Terry, but I'm not so certain that it's just automatic that he will be the one in let's say a year or two.
I wanted to
Jahan
say that
Dotson
too.
has true potential 1 upside. And we could be looking at almost, I don't know that Jahan ever overtakes Terry, but think Debo, Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is just as valuable right now in Dynasty as Debo Samuel. And that's because he was just a talented wide receiver, and it won out in the end. So I like Jahan Dotson, and I definitely want him on my teams. I agree.
Yeah, I think it'll be exciting.
All right, guys.
Can't wait.
Huge love. Let us know in the comments below what you think about these buys. And again, comment who you think is the most obvious buy of this offseason. Like the video to show some support, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLand fam.